She stood at the edge of the crowd, hands buried in the pockets of a gray hoodie, as if hiding could make her invisible. But why did the sound of a single jet overhead make her chest tighten like a wound reopening? Most people were smiling. Kids pointed skyward. Phones were already raised. The air show had that rehearsed joy to it, the kind that promised spectacle without consequence, noise without cost. Sarah Mitchell didn't smile. She watched the F-22 carve through the sky, its angles sharp, precise. Too precise to be beautiful. Beautiful things didn't demand this much control. 12 years. That was how long she'd stayed away from places like this. 12 years of quiet towns, quiet work, quiet mornings teaching people how to breathe through pain they barely understood. She'd done it well. Quiet had become her armor. Someone laughed nearby, a vendor calling out jokes. Someone else muttered something sharp about civilians who didn't belong. Sarah shifted her weight slightly. Not away, never away, just enough to stay balanced. Her fingers closed around the small metal object in her pocket, a tiny jet, cold, familiar, the only piece of her old life she'd never thrown away. She told herself she was just here to watch. She told herself the past couldn't hear her anymore. Then the crack split the air. Not thunder, not a trick of sound. This was wrong in a way her body recognized before her mind caught up. The F-22 wobbled. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a breath sucked in all at once. A dark ribbon of smoke trailed from the jet's wing, ugly against the blue sky. Mayday, mayday. The voice over the loudspeakers was young, too young, tight with panic he was trying and failing to hide. I've lost control, I can't. Everything inside Sarah went still. Not fear, not shock. Focus. She didn't move at first. She just watched the jet spiral lower, her jaw tightening as her pulse slowed instead of spiking, the way it always used to right before things went bad. People were shouting now, some backing away, some laughing nervously like this was part of the show. A man near her scoffed, "They'll fix it, they always do." Sarah's fingers dug into her palm. "They don't always." A woman in a volunteer vest pushed through the crowd, clipboard clutched like authority. Her eyes flicked over Sarah, jeans, hoodie, no badge. "Ma'am, you need to move back. This area's restricted." "I'm fine here," Sarah said quietly. The woman hesitated. There was something about Sarah's voice, not loud, not aggressive, that didn't invite argument. Still, the volunteer sniffed and turned away, muttering. Behind Sarah, someone laughed. A group of young men, sunglasses, confidence born from never being tested. "What's she gonna do?" one of them said. "Stretch at it." Sarah didn't turn. She stepped forward instead. The jet dipped again, lower this time. The pilot's voice cracked completely. "I can't keep her steady." That was when the commanding officer burst from the control tower, face tight, scanning the crowd like a man searching for a miracle he didn't believe in. "Is there anyone here?" he shouted. "Anyone at all qualified to fly a Raptor?" Silence. Not the respectful kind, the empty kind. Sarah felt it then. The weight she'd been carrying for over a decade shifting, pressing forward, demanding space. She didn't think about the eyes on her, or the cameras, or the laughter that followed as she stepped over the barrier. She thought about the kid in the cockpit, the way panic tunnels vision, the way fear lies. She walked. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because she was afraid, but because she knew what answering this call would cost. Inside the control room, the air buzzed with alarms and doubt. A major turned, already annoyed. Who let her in? Someone snorted. "She's been out 12 years. 12 years, another voice echoed. "She's a civilian." Sarah said nothing. She reached into her pocket and placed the worn leather case on the desk, opened it, let the badge catch the light. Top Gun instructor. The room fell quiet in the way rooms only do, when a story rewrites itself mid-sentence. The commander stared at her, something unreadable crossing his face. "Mitchell," he said slowly, "Valkyrie." Sarah met his eyes, no pride, no defiance. "Just truth." "Open the hangar," she said, "now." No one argued. They watched her walk toward the jet like a ghost, returning to its body. Technicians whispered. Some shook their heads. Someone muttered that reflexes didn't survive 12 years of silence. Sarah climbed into the cockpit anyway. The seat fit like it always had, too familiar, too honest. Her hands moved before her thoughts could catch up. Switches, systems, breath. The radio crackled. "I'm here," she said calmly. "You're not alone anymore." The pilot's breathing stuttered. I don't think." "You don't have to think," Sarah said. "You just have to listen." Outside, the crowd watched two jets rise into the sky. One wounded, one carrying a woman who had spent 12 years convincing herself she was finished. Inside the cockpit, Sarah felt the old ache surface, not fear. Grief. For the life she'd walked away from, for the silence she'd chosen, for the cost of being exceptional in a world eager to forget women like her. She tightened her grip. "Stay with me," she told the pilot and maybe herself. The sky didn't answer. But it listened. And somewhere between the smoke and the sun, Sarah Mitchell flew again. Not to be seen, not to be praised, but because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why did the alarms sound different once she was airborne? Sharper, closer, like they weren't warnings anymore but accusations. Sarah noticed it the moment the wheels left the runway. The jet surged upward, the force pressing her back into the seat, and for a split second, just one, she felt the old instinct flare too hard, muscle memory rushing ahead of restraint. Her hand corrected instantly, subtle, precise. No wasted motion. 12 years ago, she would have smiled at that feeling. Now she swallowed it. The sky widened around her, the coastline shrinking below into something distant and unreal. Smoke still poured from the damaged F-22 ahead, its path uneven, like a wounded animal refusing to fall but unable to run. The young pilot's breathing crackled over the radio, too fast, too shallow. I'm losing altitude again." Sarah adjusted her approach, sliding into position where he could see her clearly, not aggressive, not commanding, present. "Look at me," she said, "not the gauges, me." A pause, static, then. "I see you." Good. Seeing meant grounding. Grounding meant survival. Below them, the base was a blur of motion, vehicles racing, personnel scattering, cameras tilting skyward. None of it mattered up here. Up here, it was just two aircraft and a truth the younger pilot hadn't learned yet. Fear lies. It tells you that you are alone, that your hands are too small, that your time has already passed. Sarah had believed those lies once, believed them hard enough to walk away. The jet shuddered again. A warning light flared red across her HUD, followed by another from his aircraft. "Engine temp spiking," he said, voice rising. "I don't think." "Breathe," Sarah cut in, not sharply but firmly. "In through the nose, count it out slow." She counted with him, not aloud, she didn't need to. Her eyes tracked every movement of his jet, the micro-corrections, the lag, the hesitation that screamed inexperience masked by training manuals and confidence drills. He was good, just not ready to be dying. Inside the control tower, the mood had shifted from dismissal to disbelief. "She's stabilizing him," someone whispered. The major leaned forward, knuckles white against the console. That shouldn't be possible at that range. Outside, the crowd had gone quiet in the way that only happens when mockery curdles into uncertainty. Phones were still raised, but no one was laughing now. Sarah felt a familiar pressure building behind her eyes, not from the G-forces, from memory. Another cockpit, another voice, another day she hadn't saved someone. She pushed it down. Not now. Stay on my wing, she said. Trust the rhythm. The pilot hesitated, just long enough for her to hear it. What if I mess this up? Sarah's jaw tightened. She remembered asking that once, remembered the answer she'd never been given. Then we deal with it together, she said, but you're not messing this up. Silence. Then quieter, okay. The jets moved as one now, not perfect, not elegant, but aligned. On the ground, a medic watched the screens with her arms crossed, skepticism cracking despite herself. She's flying like she never left, she murmured. A technician beside her shook his head slowly. That's not muscle memory, that's something else. Up in the air, Sarah felt the ache spread down her shoulders into her wrists, the cost of years away, the truth no one liked to talk about. Skill didn't vanish, but endurance did. Her breathing stayed even, her voice stayed calm. Her body, however, was reminding her of every reason she'd chosen a quieter life. The damaged jet lurched suddenly, dropping a few 100 feet. The pilot shouted, panic flooding back. I can't. I've got you, Sarah snapped, not angry, not loud, but absolute. She rolled her jet closer, dangerously close. Close enough that a mistake from either of them would mean fire and debris, and headlines written by people who didn't know her name. Mirror me, she said, now. She eased the controls, slower than instinct demanded, gave him time, space. He followed. Barely. Her heart hammered once, harder than she liked, but her hands didn't shake. Below, someone in the crowd whispered, she's insane. The retired pilot standing near the barrier didn't respond. His eyes were wet now, fixed on the sky. That's Valkyrie, he said quietly. That's how she always flew, like the jet was an extension of the person she refused to be anywhere else. In the cockpit, Sarah felt sweat gather at her temples. Her neck ached. Her lungs burned just a little. Age didn't announce itself loudly. It whispered. The alarm screamed again, closer this time. His engine flame flickered. We're running out of time, the pilot said, voice breaking. I don't want to die up here. There it was. The truth beneath all the training. Sarah swallowed. Neither did I. She thought of the yoga studio, the quiet mornings, the deliberate shrinking of her life into something survivable. She thought of all the times she'd chosen safety over meaning. Listen to me, she said softly. You're scared, that's human, but fear doesn't get to fly the jet. She guided him through another correction, her voice steady even as her forearms screamed. Let me take the lead. The runway appeared in the distance, a thin line of promise. On the ground, emergency crews were in position now, foam trucks, medics, all waiting for either triumph or tragedy. The major exhaled slowly. She might actually bring him in. No one answered, because saying it out loud felt like tempting fate. Inside her cockpit, Sarah felt the edge approaching, the moment where strength gives way to will. She adjusted her grip, careful not to overcorrect. Her vision tunneled slightly. She blinked once hard. Not yet. Stay with me, she said again, not to the pilot this time. To herself. The damaged jet wobbled, then steadied. Altitude holding. Speed controlled. The pilot's breathing slowed. I can see the runway, he said. Sarah let herself breathe fully for the first time since takeoff. Good, she replied, we're coming home. But even as she said it, a quiet truth pressed against her chest. This wasn't just about landing a jet. This was about whether the woman she'd buried for 12 years was strong enough to survive being needed again. And she didn't yet know the answer. Above them, the sky stayed indifferent. Below them, the world waited. And in that narrow space between falling and flight, Sarah Mitchell held steady, carrying not just a jet on her wing, but the weight of who she had been and who she might have to become again. What happens when the body remembers something the mind has spent years trying to forget? Sarah felt it as the runway grew larger beneath them. Not relief. Pressure. The kind that comes when the end is close enough to imagine, and far enough to still lose everything. Her wrists burned now, not sharply, dully, a warning, not a failure. She rotated her grip just enough to keep control without forcing it, a compromise she'd learned the hard way in a different life. The cockpit smelled faintly of heat and metal, familiar, unforgiving. "Altitude steady," the young pilot said, his voice lower now. More controlled, still scared but no longer panicking. "Good." Panic killed faster than fire. Sarah kept her jet half a wing length ahead, her movements measured. Every correction was smaller now, the kind you only made when you trusted the air not to betray you. Inside the control tower, someone exhaled a laugh that sounded more like disbelief than joy. "She's packing him," a controller said quietly, "like she's flown with him for years." The commander didn't answer. He was watching Sarah's jet, jaw set, eyes tracking every data point. He had seen talent before. He had also seen what time did to it. And he was watching time lose. Down on the ground, the crowd had stopped shifting. Even the children were quiet now, sensing the gravity in the adults around them. Phones stayed raised, but hands trembled. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was consequence. In the air, Sarah felt the ache creep into her shoulders, down her spine. The old injuries, the ones she never talked about, made themselves known in subtle protests. She acknowledged them the way she taught others to acknowledge pain. Not as an enemy, as information. Her breath stayed even. She loosened her jaw. "You're doing well," she told the pilot. "Better than you think." A pause, then almost ashamed. "I thought I was ready for this job." Sarah didn't answer immediately. She thought about the first time she'd believed the same thing. Thought about how readiness was a myth we used to make fear polite. "No one's ever ready," she said finally. "We just show up anyway." The damaged jet shuddered again, a brief, violent tremor that rattled her teeth. Warning lights flared on his end. "I'm losing pressure." "I see it," Sarah said, already adjusting. "Follow me through it." She banked slightly, careful not to force the maneuver. She needed him calm, not impressed. Inside her chest, something twisted, not fear this time, but memory. Another pilot, another voice, another day she hadn't been fast enough. She pushed it down. "Not now." "Eyes up," she said. "You're flying, don't let the jet convince you otherwise." On the ground, a medic gripped her radio harder than necessary. "If they're that close and he stalls." "They won't," another medic said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. The retired pilot near the barrier nodded slowly, as if hearing something sacred. "That woman," he murmured, "never flew to prove anything. She flew to bring people home." In the cockpit, Sarah's hands moved with a precision that felt almost borrowed. She wasn't thinking anymore, not in words, just pressure, resistance, response. The language she tried to forget speaking again through her muscles. Her vision narrowed for a split second. She blinked hard. "There." A sign she couldn't ignore. She adjusted her posture, took a deeper breath, let oxygen do its quiet work. She could hold this, just a little longer. The runway rushed toward them now, unmistakable. "Gear down," she said. The pilot complied. His landing gear deployed with a sound that made her stomach tighten. Too loud, too final. "You're still with me," she reminded him. "Stay smooth." "I'm trying," he said. "I really am." "I know." That was the truth. He was trying harder than most ever would. Inside the control tower, the major leaned back slowly, hands trembling despite himself. "She's landing 2 aircraft," he said hoarsely, "with one set of mistakes." The commander didn't correct him. He knew better. Sarah's jet touched down first, clean, controlled. A textbook landing that would have earned nods in any briefing room 12 years ago. No applause. Not yet. She taxied just ahead, her jet clearing the runway enough to give the damaged aircraft space. "Your turn," she said gently. "You've got this." The pilot's breathing was audible now, heavy, human. "I don't want to screw this up." Sarah closed her eyes for half a second. "Neither did I." "Trust the work you've done," she said, "and if you falter, look at me." The jet descended, too fast, then corrected. Smoke thickened, flame licking once along the wing before receding. The wheels hit hard, but they held. Metal screamed, foam sprayed, sirens wailed. The jet skidded, shuddered, then slowed. Stopped. For a heartbeat, the world froze. Then sound rushed back in cheers, shouting, crying, relief breaking loose in waves. Inside her cockpit, Sarah exhaled and the room spun. She steadied herself, fingers loosening at last. On the runway, the young pilot stumbled out of his jet, legs shaking. Medics swarmed him, hands guiding, voices grounding. He turned once, searching. Sarah was already climbing down. The crowd parted for her now, not because she demanded space, but because something in her stride asked for it. Her legs wobbled when her boots hit the asphalt. She straightened anyway, scanning the scene, making sure no one else needed her. A photographer muttered something dismissive. Someone else shrugged it off as luck. She didn't hear them. Her knees buckled without warning. She went down hard, the ground rushing up too fast to brace. Hands reached for her, voices blurred. "I'm fine," she tried to say. Then the world dimmed. When she woke, the room was quiet. Sunlight filtered through a narrow window, dust floating lazily like nothing extraordinary had happened. Her body ached in ways she'd forgotten, the deep, honest ache of effort. She turned her head. The small metal jet sat on the table beside her cot. Still there. She closed her eyes, not in exhaustion this time, but in something closer to grief. For the woman she had been, and for the truth she could no longer avoid. She had flown again, and the silence she'd built her life around was gone. Why did the silence feel heavier now, after the cheering had faded, than it ever had during the fall? Sarah noticed it the moment she tried to sit up. The room tilted slightly, then steadied. White walls, a narrow window, the low hum of a fan that sounded too calm for what her body had just been through. She breathed slowly, deliberately, the way she taught others to do when pain tried to rush the process. Her muscles answered with a dull protest. Not injury. Fatigue. The kind earned, not given. She swung her legs over the side of the cot and let her feet rest on the floor. Cool, solid, real. Her hands trembled faintly now that there was nothing left to hold together. The jet-shaped keychain caught the light on the table beside her. She picked it up, turning it between her fingers. 12 years, she had told herself, this object was just a memory. Now it felt like a question. Footsteps approached outside the door, measured, hesitant, not the sound of someone used to barging in. A knock followed, soft. "Come in," she said. The commander stepped inside, his posture different than before. Less rigid, less armored. He looked older up close, the kind of tired that came from too many decisions made under pressure. He stopped just inside the doorway. "You shouldn't have done that," he said. Sarah's expression didn't change. "You asked if anyone was qualified." "That wasn't what I meant," he replied. "You put your life at risk." She met his eyes, calm, unapologetic. So did the pilot. The commander exhaled slowly. He glanced at the window, at the strip of runway barely visible in the distance. "You disappeared," he said. "One day you were the best instructor we had, the next gone." Sarah looked down at the keychain in her palm. "I didn't disappear," she said quietly. "I stepped away." He waited. She didn't elaborate. Some truths didn't need defending. Behind him, the hallway was quiet, but not empty. She could feel it, presence without intrusion. "I owe you an apology," the commander said at last. "Not for today, for before." Sarah's jaw tightened slightly. "You don't owe me anything." "I do," he insisted. "We let rumors speak louder than facts. We let silence become a verdict." She looked up then, eyes steady but tired. "Silence is efficient," she said. "It just isn't kind." Another pause. Outside, boots shifted. Someone cleared their throat, a sound like a formation holding its breath. The commander stepped aside. The door opened wider. They stood there, rows of pilots, crew, medics, technicians, faces she recognized from earlier, faces that had dismissed her, questioned her, laughed. Now they stood straight, still. No cameras, no cheers. Just presence. A young Marine stepped forward, hands shaking as he brought them into a salute. "Ma'am," he said, voice low, "I was wrong." Sarah felt something loosen in her chest, not satisfaction. Release. She nodded once, that was all. Another stepped forward, then another, each salute crisp, each face carrying its own version of regret, respect, or quiet awe. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Recognition wasn't loud, it was weighty. The commander spoke again. "Captain Mitchell," he said, using the rank she hadn't heard in over a decade. "You saved a life today. You reminded this base what excellence looks like." Sarah swallowed. "Excellence isn't rare," she replied. "Attention is." No one argued. Later, alone again, she stood by the window, watching the empty runway. The jet was gone now, the smoke cleared, the crisis already turning into a report, a lesson, a statistic. But the ache remained. Not physical, personal. She thought of the yoga studio, the people who trusted her with their brokenness, the life she'd built on quiet service instead of visible risk. Had she abandoned something? Or had she survived it? A knock came again, lighter this time. The young pilot stepped in, flight suit replaced with borrowed fatigues. His face was pale, eyes too bright. He stopped just inside the door, unsure. "I didn't get to say thank you," he said. Sarah studied him for a moment, not as a pilot, as a person who had just brushed the edge of an ending. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "You did the work." He shook his head. "You stayed when everyone else told me I was done." She felt that land deeper than she expected. "I know what it's like," she said softly, "to be told that." He nodded, understanding more than he could articulate. When he left, the room felt fuller instead of emptier. That surprised her. She sat back down on the cot, exhaustion settling in layers. Her body had limits now. She respected them. That didn't mean she feared them. Outside, the base returned to its rhythm. Orders given, jets prepped, lives moving forward. Sarah closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. She wasn't invisible anymore. But more importantly, she wasn't hiding. Whatever came next wouldn't be easy. She knew that. The world rarely made room for women who refused to stay in the boxes built for them. But she also knew this. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to prove. She had acted. And sometimes that was enough. Because dignity doesn't announce itself. It endures. What happens after the uniform remembers you, when the world expects you to step back into it, but your heart hasn't decided whether it belongs there anymore. Sarah felt that question settle in her chest as the base slowly returned to routine. By the next morning, the runway was alive again. Jets moved with practiced urgency. Crews joked the way people do when danger has passed and survival needs a soundtrack. Reports were already being written, language flattening the chaos into something manageable. She watched it all from a bench near the hangar, a paper cup of coffee warming her hands. Her body still ached, but the sharper pain had faded, leaving behind a deeper fatigue, the kind that didn't come from muscle or bone. It came from being seen again. A pair of technicians passed her, voices low. "That's her," one whispered. The other nodded, didn't think someone could come back like that. Sarah looked away, not out of shame, but because attention still felt unfamiliar, heavy, like wearing a coat you weren't sure you wanted back. She built a life where no one expected heroics from her, where usefulness came quietly, where worth wasn't measured in seconds saved or lives redirected midair. Now the bass seemed to hum with a different expectation. She didn't stand, she didn't move to join it. Not yet. The commander found her there later, posture careful, as if approaching a wild thing that had chosen calm but might change its mind. "There's a review board meeting this afternoon," he said. "Formalities, they'll want your statement." Sarah nodded once. "I'll give it." "And after that," he added, hesitating, "there are options." She finally looked up at him. "Options," she repeated. He gestured vaguely toward the hangar, the jets. "Reinstatement, advisory roles, training, you still carry weight here." Sarah studied the sky beyond him, clear, deceptively peaceful. "I didn't come back for that," she said. "I know," he replied, "but sometimes coming back changes what's possible." He left her with that. The review room was quiet, all clean lines and neutral colors. People sat across from her, some in uniform, some in suits, faces attentive, respectful. None of them had mocked her yesterday. That mattered. She answered their questions simply. No embellishment, no dramatics. She spoke of procedures, of trust, of listening when fear tried to take over. At one point, a woman across the table, civilian, sharp eyes, leaned forward. "Why did you leave?" she asked, not accusatory, curious. Sarah paused. Because the honest answer wasn't clean. "Because I was tired," she said, "not of flying, of proving I deserved to." The room went still. No one challenged that. When it was over, she stepped outside feeling lighter and heavier at the same time, like a door had opened without her asking, and now she had to decide whether to walk through it. She didn't go back to the hangar. Instead, she walked the perimeter fence, the quiet edge of the base, where the noise softened and the sky felt wider. She thought about the students she taught back home, the ones who came in carrying grief, insecurity, bodies that felt like enemies. She thought about how she taught them to listen instead of fight. Maybe that wasn't a detour. Maybe it was preparation. A familiar voice called her name. The retired pilot stood a few yards away, navy cap in hand, older than he'd looked yesterday. Or maybe she was just seeing him more clearly now. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "not just for the kid, for reminding me why I stayed as long as I did." Sarah smiled faintly. "We all stay until we can't." He nodded, "And sometimes we leave so we can." They stood there a moment, watching a jet lift cleanly into the air. "Whatever you decide," he said, "don't let them rush you." "I won't," she replied. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Sarah packed the small bag she'd brought with her. Nothing special, just clothes, a book, the keychain. She paused with it in her hand. For years it had been an anchor, a reminder of what she'd lost. Now it felt like a compass. At the gate, the young pilot waited, leaning awkwardly against the railing. He straightened when he saw her. "I heard you might be leaving," he said. "I am," she answered, "for now." He nodded, disappointment flickering before respect took its place. "I hope," he began, then stopped. "I hope you keep flying, in whatever way you do." Sarah met his gaze. "I already am." She drove away as the base lights flickered on behind her, the sound of engines fading into distance. The road stretched ahead, empty and open. She didn't know if she would return in uniform. She didn't know if the sky would call her back again the same way. But she knew this. She no longer needed to hide from who she had been, nor rush toward who others wanted her to be. Some battles aren't about reclaiming the past. They're about choosing the future on your own terms. And as the last light slipped below the horizon, Sarah Mitchell drove forward, steady hands on the wheel, carrying her strength quietly. Not to be seen, but to be true. The wind carried salt and dust along the coastal road as Sarah drove. Her hands rested lightly on the wheel, though the memory of yesterday's force, the jets, the G-forces, the tightrope of control, still lingered in her muscles. She felt every inch of it, every ache and every pulse of adrenaline, yet her mind was surprisingly calm. Why did it feel so strange to be moving without purpose? To have completed what everyone thought impossible and returned to nothing but silence? For 12 years, she had measured herself in missions, in flight hours, in precision. Now, she measured herself in the emptiness after triumph. Her thoughts drifted back to the young pilot, the boy who had believed himself lost, whose hands had trembled around controls he wasn't ready for. She had guided him, not because she wanted recognition, not because anyone had asked, but because she could. Because someone had once done the same for her, long ago, and she understood the weight of being unseen until it was almost too late. The memory of the runway, the roar of engines, the smoke trailing, the chaos and the disbelief, pressed against her mind like a shadow she couldn't shake. But it no longer paralyzed her. It reminded her of something deeper, that courage often arrives quietly, inside people who the world has already written off. At a rest stop she parked and stepped out, the evening sun striking her face. Her hoodie was damp with sweat from yesterday, her jeans scuffed. No uniform, no badge, no expectation but her own. She closed her eyes, feeling the sea breeze on her skin, inhaling its crisp honesty. 12 years, 12 quiet, hidden years, 12 years of teaching, healing, breathing, avoiding, and then a call she couldn't ignore. The F-22 had sent a signal she couldn't refuse, a life hung in balance, and she had flown. She thought of the young Marine saluting her, the doubters made silent by the act of competence, the retired pilot whose eyes had glimmered with recognition. She had not needed applause, but she had felt it anyway, weighted, lasting, and undeserved. And yet, in all of that, she had discovered something she hadn't anticipated. That being seen could hurt, but it could also heal. The small metal jet in her pocket caught the light again, warming her hand as if alive. It had been a talisman for survival, a reminder of past glories, a witness to her quiet life. Now, it was a symbol of something larger: resilience, patience, endurance, and the understanding that strength is not measured in spectacle, but in persistence. The sun dipped lower, painting the horizon in soft golds and deep blues. The world was quiet here, the ocean singing a lullaby she had long ignored. Her heart, still thrumming from yesterday, settled into a rhythm that matched the waves. She could feel the past behind her and the possibilities ahead, both vast and undefined. Driving onward, she passed fields, fences, towns she recognized only in silhouette. And in each fleeting shadow she saw a fragment of her younger self, the girl who had trained harder, the pilot who had loved the sky, the woman who had walked away. She smiled faintly, not at triumph, but at survival, at the quiet defiance of continuing despite doubt, despite fear, despite the years. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the world awaited her return or her absence. She didn't need to decide yet. She only needed to move forward, carrying herself with the dignity she had once buried, letting it act silently through her every choice. The coastline stretched on, endless and open, like a promise she hadn't dared make to herself. And as the last light of day melted into night, Sarah Mitchell breathed deeply and whispered, not to the world, not to anyone, but to herself, "I am here, I have returned, and I will not hide again." Sometimes dignity doesn't announce itself. It doesn't beg for recognition or demand applause. It endures. It moves quietly through action. It chooses the moment, even when the world doubts, even when the years have passed. And as the stars blinked awake above the open road, Sarah drove into them, not as a memory, not as a legend, but as herself. Strong, unbroken, and finally, unapologetically seen.